So time passes pretty quickly. We're already here at Son of Blazing Glory, which is the patch that introduces Suzette and Christiane. Now there's actually a whole lot that's going to go on in this patch cycle, and I'm going to try to talk about as much of it as possible. We can start by talking about Suzette and Christiane, although I'm pretty sure there's not a whole lot I can add anymore. As with most global patches, I'm going to try to keep myself concise if possible. So let's start by talking about Suzette. Now the obvious character to be comparing Suzette to is probably Joshua. She plays and functions very similarly to him. She's an AoE focused character that also does extra fixed damage after she scores a critical hit. Now there are a couple gimmicky things about her that should be noted. So first let's look at her talent. First thing I want to note is that her kind of damage increase, which is on a lot of these DPS characters, for her it is a crit rate increase and a normal damage increase. Now this is very notable because in a lot of cases like this, assassins or archers that are very crit focused, they get crit rate and crit damage. That's not what it is for Suzette. She gets crit hit rate and she actually gets normal damage. So what that means is that even if you don't crit with Suzette, she can still do pretty good damage. Now her fixed damage is based on being able to deal critical hits, so it's not like you would purposefully build her to have less crit or anything like that, but it is nice for those situations where you might have gotten unlucky and you didn't get a crit hit. She's still got to do pretty good damage, as opposed to someone like Joshua where if he misses the crit, not only does he not get the fixed, but he also just does way less damage. Actually, if I remember correctly, Joshua does not have any sort of damage increase at all. The big downside of Suzette's talent is that it only functions on enemies that are in a straight line out from her. And it's not that big a deal because her skills are kind of designed like Lamb does, or like Joshua's Dark Demise, in that it's very linear focused. So it's not too hard to line up your shots with Suzette so that you'll deal the most damage. But it is just one of those weird limitations that she has. Now in terms of her AoEs, the most unique things are one of her 2Cs and her 3C. So she does have a teleport skill that can teleport one of your allies, and then it actually attacks the enemies around where you teleport them to. The damage from the skill is actually kind of low, but obviously the utility here is that it is a teleport. This is also a 5-block teleport, so it is not as strong as Tensei Jessica's teleport, or just the standard teleports you usually bring. It's the same distance as Iris's teleport, basically. Regardless, these sort of positioning and movement skills tend to be some of the most powerful in the game, so it is a very nice option for her to have. Aside from that, she has a collection of 2C AoE skills. Not much to say there. She also has Ruthless, just like Joshua. If you really, really want to pump up the power of just one AoE from her, then Ruthless can be useful. And she actually has a 1C skill that allows her to reset her cooldowns. Now this is almost like having a built-in clock for herself, but the obvious downside here is that it does take an entire turn for her to use this. But not only does it reduce her cooldowns by 4, it actually increases her crit rate as well, so it's pretty much nothing but upsides on this skill. And it's nice that you don't have to enchant her with Clock to make her be able to AoE consistently. You can just stick to something like Breeze or Full Moon and do just fine. And if you're so inclined, you could probably use those Blazing Sun scrolls that you have saved up for her as well. The last 2C skill of hers that I think is very notable is the fact that she has Riposte. Now even though I kept saying that she is an AoE focused character, it is worth noting that she has 40% troop attack, and she has a pretty good selection of troops. She has Firebrand, she has Shinobi, she has Dwarves, of course. She has Bandits and Dark Elf Snipers, which is to say that if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you have Suzette as an option, but you feel like AoE isn't going to be very useful, but Assassination will be, she does have that as a side option, which is always really nice to add a little bit of flexibility to her. Just make sure you have to line up your shot with her because of her talent rather than attacking diagonally. So with all that out of the way, I guess I should come to probably the most gimmicky part of her set, which is her 3C. So her 3C does a nice 1-ring AoE attack, targeted in an area up to 5 spaces away from her. The damage from the skill itself is pretty good, but the extra effect is that it does one of those poison ticks, and then after that it will do a second AoE on the second turn following this skill's use. Now, I've seen a couple people get a bit confused about this skill. They don't exactly know how it works, but typically the way to use this skill is that you would use it as the last move of your turn. So Suzette uses her 3C at the end of your turn. She does 3.35 times AoE damage, and plus the fixed damage and the fixed damage debuff. And then since she's the last person to move, the next turn starts, and there's going to be a visual indicator as to where the second AoE is going to land. Now for the entire next turn, that is not going to land. It is at the beginning of the turn following at that turn. So that is the second turn from when you launched the first AoE. Then it lands and does 0.38 times AoE damage. So like I said a second ago, you usually use it when Suzette is your final move of the turn. the reason you do that, of course, is because that gives your opponent less opportunity to move out of the way. Now, some people might hear this and think it sounds like it's pretty weak because it gives your opponent an opportunity to get away, but it does a couple things. First of all, if you are in a more slow tank pushy kind of game, this puts a lot of pressure on your opponent if you use it correctly. Because remember, you can always save Suzette as the final move for the turn following when you first use the 3C as well. So that means if you use the 3C at the end of a turn, and then you wait until the next turn, and you wait until the final move to use Suzette and launch one of her other AoEs, that means since she's the last move, another AoE is going to come crashing down right at the beginning when she ends her turn. So that's actually 2 AoEs in a row from her. And this might sound like it's a whole lot of work to get 2 instances of AoE damage when there are other characters that can do something very similar. Like Ares can kind of do similar things. Leonhardt can do similar things. But Suzette does have a couple things on her side. Her damage is pretty high. She adds a nice bit of fixed damage on top. And as mentioned before, Suzette still has the option to be an assassin with riposte if you really need it. Now, with all that being said, it is true that Suzette wasn't used very often on a Chinese server. And that's pretty much because she is kind of a gimmicky character. She's not bad or anything. She's one of those characters where if you really like her or you really like her playstyle, she can fit just fine into a lot of boxes, really strong AoE damage, with a guard piercing option if you really need it. She's definitely a more niche character, but she is definitely one of the characters you can make work just fine. And that's really all that needs to be said. Okay, so the other character we're getting is Christiane, and what do I even need to say about her? She's just a faction buffing tank for Princess. She's a magic defense converter. She's very tanky. She has a lot of utility options. She's like Landius in that she has kind of a crit reduction buff. She even has a magic damage reduction aura as well, which makes her bad news for a lot of the units that exist right now. For example, a lot of the mages, Tensei Jessica, Lucretia, and Kaira all really hate dealing with her. She can even get first strike after you strip her of her weakening stacks. And when her guard is up, she has the same guard as Emilia, so she can counter at 2 range. So yeah, that's pretty much a good summation of what she's like. She is a lot like Landius, except for Princess instead of Legend faction. In fact, in many ways, she is better than Landius. She does have the 25% base damage reduction in her talent, so she can tank both melee and range stuff. She has a revive in her talent that allows her to revive up to 50% HP when she is at 6 stars. Now, this revive actually takes a few turns to set up when you are not at 6 stars, but at 6 stars, she has it from turn 1. So, maxed out Christiane is pretty much as good as Hilda is at tanking. Now, I think most players will still agree that Hilda is better for a number of reasons. Hilda's complete crit block for 1 attack, her ability to stop units from getting pushed back, and as far as tanking is concerned, probably the most crazy thing Hilda has is her class change. Christiane doesn't have any of that. Like I said, she's more like Landius. She has a ranged defense aura, and that's optional on her. She is better at tanking magic because you tend to stack magic defense on her. You would try to build her like Lydon. Basically, you would want to stack her HP defense and magic defense as much as you can. But she is stuck on the class that you choose, either infantry or cavalry, and usually people go with infantry because that allows her to use her breadth of troops a little bit more effectively. Now, you do see the occasional cavalry Christiane. Just know that if you choose to use a cavalry Christiane, there is a number of really big flaws with it. Probably the biggest one people know of is the fact that cavalry heroes tend to charge in front of their troops. Now, of course, with Christiane, this is actually less of a concern, because once you get rid of all her stacks at the start of a fight, she can do first strike. So obviously in that situation, it's not as big a deal anymore. But if you run into enemies that also have first strike, the 2 first strikes usually cancel out. So for example, if an L1 walking 4 blocks is attacking Christiane with her first strike up, they're just both going to attack at the same time like normal. So speaking of her troops are very interesting in that they gave her a set of troops that make her more suited for magic tanking. That's not to say that she's not good at tanking physical stuff as well, but she is more focused on tanking magic, or at least she's very good at tanking magic. She not only has the Empress personal guards, but she actually also has angels, which I don't believe has ever been stuck on another tank before, unless you count someone like Emmerich. She also has Highlanders, which are okay at tanking. She pretty much only has one good physical tanking choice, and that's Phalanx. And since Christiane is usually run as an infantry, Phalanx are usually good enough to stop a lot of the cavalry that might be able to kill her otherwise. So one of the other notable things about Christiane is the fact that she can faction buff and guard up on the same turn. This all comes from her 3C. In fact, her 3C is the only faction buff she gets. She does not get a 2C faction buff like a lot of other units do. So her 3C is not only a faction buff, but it also puts up her guard at the same time. And that includes the 2-block guard and her magic defense to attack conversion. And just like with Emilia, her advanced holy guard cannot be dispelled. However, just like most tanks, the guard range can be dispelled. But the thing is that this has a faction buff, cooldown, and duration. So that means just like any other faction buff, it can be overwritten just as it's ending, which actually makes Christiane a very, very reliable tank. Because what that means is that your 2 range guard will never go down as long as it doesn't get dispelled. It also means she sets up in a single turn, which is a huge advantage she has over all the other tanks that have existed up to this point. Up to this point, a lot of the tanks had to take a turn to faction buff and then take another turn to guard up. Christiane doesn't have to do that. She can be ready on turn 1, which is actually a huge tactical advantage. People who play a lot of PvP probably know what I'm talking about here. Beyond that, there really isn't a whole lot to say about Christiane. She's just a really good tank. Although some people have noted that they don't see Christiane as often as they thought they would, based off their initial impression. And really that has more to do with how the meta has developed, more so than a problem with Christiane herself. If you're someone who likes playing tanks, or if you're someone who likes playing Princess, I can't see any reason to not pull for Christiane. And since we're on the topic right now, I should point out that currently there are projections that around March is when we're going to see a rerun of Christiane and Suzette. Christiane is going to be run on a rate-up banner alongside Omega, and Suzette is going to be run on a Destiny banner alongside Sigma and Brenda. So you can take that into consideration as to whether or not you want to pull here. Personally, I feel like if you want Christiane, you should probably pull for her now, not just because there's no Destiny banner in sight, but because you probably want to be sharding her up immediately anyway. And of course, there's never any guarantee that they will follow the Chinese schedule exactly. They have skipped over banners from the Chinese server before, so the short of it is that if you feel like you want Christiane at all, I do highly recommend you pull on this banner. Suzette, I think, is a little bit more take her or leave it. If you really like her set, if you really like her kit, then yeah, for sure, try to pull for her. But she is projected to get a Destiny banner down the line, so that will be another opportunity to get her in case you get Christiane here but don't get Suzette. Okay, so now I'm just going to go over the 3Cs that are coming out real quick here. We have Leonhardt, Serena, and Sophia. Leonhardt's 3C is pretty good. It's just another AoE. It's a 2-ring AoE that summons a copy of himself that will also be able to do Ethereal Fire Machete and Zero Storm. It can also take physical hits for him. It does do reduced damage, so basically this makes Leonhardt slightly stronger. Usually he does the 2 AoE combo, so with this, he can do a 2 AoE combo, and then his summon can do a 3rd AoE that is slightly weaker than the standard Leonhardt AoE, and also provide Leonhardt a bit of protection. It's not some huge revolutionary thing for Leonhardt, but Leonhardt has always been a little bit relevant. He's been good since Season 1. I mean, he's fell off over the seasons, but he's still been good. And it's obvious they're trying to avoid making him too strong. And I think this is a pretty good 3C. I think he will always be relevant. He's always a good double AoE character. And of course, you can always gamble for some stuns. That's always nice. Only other thing worth noting about this 3C is that it does have Detect built in, basically. It doesn't have the crit clause in Detect where it becomes 100%, so it only has 50% chance to disable passives. But even with that, it's pretty good. Serena's 3C is basically a combination of Power Stab, Shield Dash, and Ram. So it puts up her Power Stab buff, so it converts defense to attack, and then it will push back an enemy, and if they knock into other enemies on the way, they will be stunned. All of the buffs on this are dispellable, and all the debuffs on it are dispellable. Pretty much the only notable thing I think about this is that it is 2 range, which is kind of interesting. And Serena was always missing a Power Stab-like skill. She always had to put Unbreakable Guardian up before she could use any of her offensive skills, so it's nice to have something that is very immediate in that sense. But me personally, I'm a little bit disappointed in this 3C compared to, say, Vargas's. The most unique aspect of it is still the passive portion, which is basically, it's kind of like a Last Rites effect in an aura. So allies that have 100% life will have their hero damage taken reduced by 25%. This can obviously save people from a lot of things. It can save you from Ares double AoE. It can make AoEs in general more tolerable. It does give Serena some amount of assassin resistance for his allies, unlike a lot of other tanks like Leiden or Vargas. I feel like Serena's main function is to be an off tank, usually alongside Landius, because of her armor, she will guard people who are less than 80% life, whether it's physical or magical. So, you have Landius as your main tank, essentially, and you can have Serena as the backup tank. You would usually place your units so that Serena has higher guard priority than Landius, so what it is that if your Landius is low on health, then Serena will instead come in to guard, and that can protect your team pretty well. Especially in this meta, this is probably a less viable tactic. People just don't really play tanky games that often anymore, but you can make Serena work in those. But overall, this 3C is definitely not going to get Serena out of the bench for most players. Last one is Sophia's. I mean, there's really not a whole lot to say here. It's pretty much just a better mass heal. It does remove debuffs before healing, which is a really strong effect. Obviously, it's nice to be able to remove things like Curse of Wounding or Heal Block before the heal hits, which is not something most heals can do. Pretty much the only other heal that does this is Close. So you would probably usually run this alongside Rewind and the basic heal or Regenerate. In a pinch, I can see somebody using Sophia with the 3C plus mass heal and the new debuff removal staff. You can just alternate between the 3C and mass heal over and over, and she'll be a pretty good AoE healer. So even though this looks like a very simple 3C, it is actually pretty good when you consider the rest of Sophia's kit. The problem, of course, is that right now, a lot of the healers that exist are just so powerful. You have Rosen, of course, you have Florentia, who has Act Again and all that, Liana, Act Again. Sissy White has all kinds of utility tools. Sophia's most unique utility tool is still her Rewind, and she has a mini faction buff for anybody, which is always really nice. And of course, the 30% defense buff is very, very strong. I hesitate to really say this 3C is in any way bad. It is a pretty good 3C. Really, the problem comes down to the competition for healers being so competitive. So next, let's talk about the exclusives. We got Yulia and Ares here. Yulia's exclusive is pretty good, considering that it is quote-unquote free, as long as you have challenge points. If you have trouble getting like Tenyo's robe to drop, or even, like Aeolus armor if you use an infantry Yulia, this is a pretty good armor. One thing I do really like about it is that if you get Yulia killed, you use up a revive and she revives with low HP. If you combine this with her 3C, she'll get the Godly Menace heal from this robe, plus the 3C self-heal, and that will probably get her back into revive range if you are strong enough. Sometimes the problem is that you want to use the 3C before Godly Menace instead of the other way around, and this can be nice to ensure that you can do that. But yeah, overall this robe is definitely in the maybe pile for exclusives because there's just so many good armors to choose from for Yulia. It has its applications, but if you're low on controllers, I wouldn't really bother with this one. The Ares helm, on the other hand, I think is really, really strong. Now, this would also be based on what kind of box you're running, because the main function of this helm is to make Ares a better faction buffer. By greatly increasing Ares' normal attack damage and making it so that he doesn't have to pass through anybody to run away since he gets one of his talent stacks just from attacking something, it means you can run the faction buff plus 3C set and get pretty strong normal attack out of the guy. This is especially the case if you run a Ragnarok Ares. Consider the fact that Ares has 25% damage from his 3C, a Ride the Wind buff, and then this helm will give another 30% damage on top of that. That means your normal attacks are doing plus 55% damage, which is really strong. I mean, to put that in perspective, that is almost as strong as Assault. And Ares just gets to do it as a normal attack. Really, the biggest downside to using this helm is that you don't get to use King's Crown anymore, and King's Crown is always really nice. But yeah, if you run a lot of Tensei characters, I highly recommend you get this helm. Now, obviously, if you run Ares and he's one of the only Tensei characters in your box, then you don't have to worry about this helm as much, but right now there's a lot of meta Tensei characters, so I feel like this helm is really, really good right now. Okay, so I guess the next thing to talk about is SP Narm. Honestly, I'm going to keep this pretty short and simple, I think. In most ways, SP Narm is just better Narm. She's significantly stronger at pretty much all the things she could already do in PvE, which is a lot already. She was really good at trapping opponents. She was good at fighting flyers. She was really great at H&M for Ancient Beckoning. For the most part, she does all that better in her SP class. It has a significant attack increase. But for PvP, I would consider her just like usable. The big problem for her is that there's just too many units with really, really high movement nowadays, and she doesn't really match up with that. She has 5 move in her new class. She's basically a cavalry archer. She does have terrain master movement, which is nice, but her only way of extending her movement range is aim. So you can think of it as her having 7 move plus 2 range attack if you use one of her skills, which is a 9 threat range, which isn't bad. Like, that's still pretty good, but it's still outdone by a lot of the high movement units nowadays. She also has a Guard Pierce skill, but it's only for flyers, and there really isn't that many flyer units right now. I mean, Ares is around, Ultimuller is around, and those are the two biggest ones, really. I guess Wet Ham is going to be a flyer for the most part. And these are all targets that Narm should be able to kill without a problem. But when you compare her to someone like Illustrial, she does seem very lackluster in comparison. The one thing I will say that she does have is that she has Sprint, which makes her an enabler. And those are always nice to have. If you're a very rush-oriented player, you know, like even Matthew, Matthew is bad. Like almost his entire kit is terrible. But just the fact that he has Sprint has made him still viable in a lot of teams. Now, obviously, units like Akka, Luna, and Werner are better at enabling than Matthew or Narm is. But, you know, it's always nice to have these options. And on that note, if you use Luna, Narm works a lot better with Luna as well, because not only does Luna buff Narm, Narm can use aim to run through Luna's aura twice, which greatly increases her movement range. And really, that's all I gotta say. Like, Narm did not gain any significantly different or new mechanics. She's just a really strong archer. The Heart of Desire is going to be coming from the new roguelike mode that is running again. So you're going to get the Heart of Desire for free, but all the investment you're going to have to do from the quests are pretty much the same as they usually are. So it's a pretty high investment. You know, it's hard for me to tell people not to invest in SP Narm because she is an objective improvement pretty much in almost every way from normal Narm. And Narm is such an essential character for PvE. It's hard to say you shouldn't get her. And I think she is actually usable in PvP, but just don't expect crazy things out of her. I think it is an upgrade worth getting if you think you have the resources to spare, but don't go out of your way for it if you have other important things to upgrade. And those are really my short thoughts on SP Narm. So since we're on the topic here, let me just reiterate what the third run of the roguelike Golden Sea Voyage was like. So it seems that after the feedback they got from the last run of the event, they realized that people really didn't like the hard mode. I kind of liked the idea behind it, but I thought they scaled the difficulty way too high, and it was a little bit too unforgiving. But instead this time they just completely removed the hard mode, which I guess isn't a bad call. But what they did instead is that this is the normal mode this time, which I guess is the only mode this time. It is probably the most annoying run of it they ever did. However, that is mitigated by the fact that, you know, you can reset like 20, 30 times. Like, so, you know, if your team isn't working for, especially the last boss, it's actually quite difficult, as I recall. You know, if you are running into trouble there, you know, you can reset your team. It's really time consuming, which is what's annoying. But I think everybody will be able to beat it as long as they invest the time into it. So there's the 15 levels of the normal mode, and there are 3 sets of challenge stages. And that's pretty much the entire event this time. And like I said, you will get Narm's Heart of Desire from this mode this time. You don't have to beat the whole thing. I think you only have to go up to like stage 10 or something to get the Heart of Desire. So if you're really low on time, don't worry too much about needing to beat the entire thing. You just have to get through like, I think the first 2/3 of it or something, and you'll get that Heart of Desire. And if you really have 0 time to play, you know, in the future, they're going to put SP Narm's Shard into the Dimensional Expedition shop, so you're going to have to get it from there. But it's free from here if you play the mode, so I would recommend you play it if you want the SP Narm Shard. Okay, everyone. So next, let's talk about the new Covenant mode they're about to add. Now, what I'm going to do here is that essentially I'm just going to take you guys on a tour through the mode. I usually don't do this because the tablet I use to play the Chinese account is a Xiaomi tablet, and it's like kind of a pain in the ass to get it to record stuff. But anyway, like past all the technical stuff, I'm just going to show you guys just on the screen here because that makes it probably easier to understand. And the first thing I will say is that like this really isn't something that I think anybody needs to stress out about because it actually is a very simple mode. I've been getting quite a few questions to people from people that say like, oh, you know, I have no idea, you know, how this or that works. But, you know, once you watch this part, you probably will get a good idea. So right here, I'm on Thor's level up page. And as you can see, I have, you know, I just leveled him up right here. And I just gained a couple stats from leveling him up. So when you level up, you gain this thing right here, which is, those are used to upgrade all these nodes. And as you can see, I've kind of been like pinching them. You know, you should play this game or play this mode more efficiently than I have because I've been very lazy and I haven't really been paying attention to my Chinese account very much. I usually just like, yeah, I should be much further in this mode than I am. For example, you can see my Thor is level 51. I've faced off against people in Apex on the Chinese server, and a lot of them have like level 80 or like something like that for Thor now. So, and that's because like I don't pay much attention, right? So these spheres right here, these are to upgrade some of the more advanced nodes. Like, let me click on this one right here. Okay, that's not one of them. Here we go. So this one, as you can see, costs 2 orbs. So the orbs usually come from certain harder stages in the Kingdom of the Aurora challenges, which I'll show you in a minute. So here's just like, so you click on the magnifying glass, you get to see his stats, you can see his skills. Not much to say there. Okay, so this right here, so I've clicked on the helm, and this shows me what stat bonuses I'm getting from this particular covenant. So Thor right now is giving my characters 160 HP, 30 attack, 6 intelligence, 14 defense, 10 magic defense, 6 skill, and it's giving my troops 1% HP, 6% attack, and 1% defense. And of course, keep in mind, you know, my Thor is not even maxed out. So these are not insignificant boosts, I think. Like, I mean, for example, you look at the soldier boost, like 6% attack, that's a lot when you think about it. Because, I mean, think about how much farming you have to do to get 6% attack on your troops. And you'll realize, like, these are not insignificant boosts. I will say, like, a lot of the level ups I have done, as you can see here, have been focused on upgrades to my heroes and my soldiers rather than upgrades to Thor himself. Like, for example, this node right here, this is an upgrade to Thor. This right here is also an upgrade to Thor. If you look closely, let me zoom in here. So the ones with the 3 triangles in the symbol, those are upgrades to Thor. So these kind of shield-looking things, these are soldier boosts. And this like kind of winged symbol, this is a hero boost. So you can use that to sort of plan out what kind of route you want on the board. I'm not certain if you can max out everything. I don't believe you can. So there actually have been images already where people kind of figured out, okay, this is probably the best route for you. And I'll probably try to put one of those images in the video real quick and just show you like an example of what people have been doing. So anyway, the last thing I will say on this page is that there is this circular button. So this button is for me to reset the board. As you can see, this board reset is free. I have not used the board reset yet. So like when you first start using the Thor upgrades, like if you want to experiment, don't feel too bad about it because you know you do get a free reset. However, once you use your free reset, you're going to have to start spending, I believe it was Trinity crystals after that, and I think it starts at like 40 or something like that. So you know, don't just like reset willy-nilly. You know, you can experiment around with it at first. And then if you feel like, oh, I want to reset it, maybe after that you want to start looking at what other people are doing and maybe discuss it with other people. So this is just Freya's board. As you can see, I have not touched Freya at all. Like, I have barely touched her. Not much to say here. I mean, it's the same concept. You know, like Freya just has different kinds of boosts. And as you can see, there's like all these missing symbols. So there's many covenants to come. In fact, on the Chinese server, where they're about to get Heimdall. But anyway, like when it first comes out on the global server, obviously it's just going to be Thor, who is more physical attack focused, if I'm not mistaken. And Thor himself is very powerful. Maybe I can show you guys in a second here. But first, why don't we go to the Kingdom of the Aurora and take a look. Okay, so this is the Kingdom of Aurora. As you can see, there is also there are separate like areas for each of the covenants. So this the gold one here is Thor's kingdom, and the green one here, this is Freya's kingdom. So you know, as you can see, there's a little clock running there. So basically, I've mentioned this in the past, but these generate currency over time, and this currency, as you saw earlier, was what you use to level up the covenant. And you know, there's this blue button down here, and I can click it right now. You know, that's just me getting all the level up currency that I've saved up. As I said before, it saves for up to 72 hours. So don't worry if you like forget to check it one day. And you know, it's like 72 hours is pretty long. It's pretty hard for it to max out unless you just completely forget to click into this thing. You know, it's just one button press. So I mean, it's annoying that it's just another button press you have to do every day, right? But whatever, like it's not even every day. Like it's 72 hours, right? So okay, let's just go into one of these kingdoms and I'll show you what it's like. So first, let's just talk about the stages. Okay, so I mentioned this last time, and so each node of the stages is kind of like Timeless Trial. You have 3 levels here, and you have to deploy a different team for each one. So what that means is that this was actually kind of difficult for me to do on the Chinese server because my account wasn't very well developed, and I didn't have 3 full teams of strong units. I had like 1 really strong team and 1 secondary team that was just sort of built. So it was actually really hard for me to spread out units in a way that I can consistently clear like all 3 stages. So I had to come up with some like low unit strategies to beat like maybe the first map and then do the other 2 with my stronger units. But obviously, if you are a long-time player, like this should be no problem whatsoever for you. I don't think anybody who has been playing this game for a while is going to have any sort of trouble clearing these. Okay, I accidentally clicked into the chat window there. Ah! Okay, I really hate that. Okay, so as you can see here, you know, these are just some of the rewards you can get. You know, okay, 20 Trinity Crystals on this one, 2 enchant packs on this one. So after you clear, this is the first set of stages, right? And when you clear this first set of stages, you obtain Thor. And you also get these. So this one is obviously, this is the level up experience, so you just get some when you beat this first set of stages. And this one is the generation over time. Like this isn't an item, it just says like, okay, it gives this gives 50 currency over time or whatever. So, you know, it's not like an item you earn, it's just like you get a certain amount of currency generation over time. So as you can see, as you progress in the levels, obviously they get harder, and you get some more rewards. This one is also not an item, it's just another thing to use to upgrade Thor. So you can see that there's actually also feats on these stages. Like, okay, so this says, you know, defeat 3 enemies within 3 turns. And it pretty much just continues like that. It's kind of like I said, it's a little bit like Timeless Trial. For example, the feats here, and you can see like right here, this was like the special upgrade orb to get some of the higher level things. So you do want to do these feats if you want to max out your God's Covenant. So this one actually says, you know, in 3 turns defeat a certain enemy. And this one says in 3 turns defeat one of the other enemies. So there's 2 bosses on the stages, and each one of them says like, you know, defeat that boss within 3 turns. That's the feats on this stage. So as you can see, like, you know, there's really not that many stages total when you think about them, because there's only 3 stages in each node, and there's only about 10 nodes, I believe, so 30 stages total. You know, that's not insignificant, but the other thing about it is that these are actually time gated for you. So these are unlocked based on your Covenant's level. So for example, if I click on this locked one here, it says Thor needs to be level 48 before you can unlock this. This one says Thor. So that one was green because my Thor is already like level 51, so I can come to this stage already. I just, you know, been lazy and I haven't actually done all of them yet. This one says Thor needs to be level 55, and as you can see, it's grayed out, so I need to get Thor to level 55 before I can do this final stage. So what that means is that when, and I mentioned this last time as well, is that when this mode comes out, try to beat as much as you can, like right away, because you want to start generating that currency, because the currency is what you use to level up Thor, right? And this is the same for all the other Covenants as well. So you want to clear as many stages as you can as fast as you can, and then like level up Thor and try to unlock the stages so you can keep up with the progression, because it generates currency over time. And you know, if you don't do it early on, it's just going to snowball how much you're falling behind. And like I said, the boost to your heroes and your troops is not insignificant. So you know, like if you are busy with work that day, or, you know, you have school that day or whatever, you know, and you say, oh, I can't play until like later that evening, or maybe I can't play until the next day, like it's not that big a deal. Like, you know, if you don't worry about missing out like one day, but don't do what I did on this account, which is like I've just kind of left it there for like months and months and didn't progress the mode at all. Then you'll definitely fall behind. You know, don't stress out too much about it, but it is like, just understand like how it works and, you know, follow that accordingly. So this right here is like this so okay, so what it is that okay, so right here, this right here, this reward, this chair reward, unlocks more slots over here. And you know, as you can see, this is just, you need to put in certain units, and it says you you know, if you put in certain units of certain classes or certain factions, you will get a further increase in generation rate of the currency. So as you can see here, I have like 99% efficiency or whatever, and that gives me plus 287 of the currency per hour. Not much to say here. This obviously encourages you to have a variety of units built. So for Thor, of course, it is Empire plus Princess, Infantry, and Flyer. And if you want to take a look at Freya real quick, it's Glory and Mythical with Mage and Holy. So I mean, there's really not a whole lot to say here. It's pretty much like the you know, the expeditions, except you don't have to come in and regularly like swap the heroes out or anything. But you do need to come in and collect the currency, of course. And that's really all there is to say about Kingdom of Aurora. You know, it might seem like it's very complicated at first glance, but it's actually very simple. You know, it really just comes down to clear as many stages as you can, as fast as you can. You know, don't worry too much if you fall like a day or two behind. You know, don't stress out that much about the game. You know, like, you know, but don't leave it alone. Like it's like Ancient Beckoning, right? Like if you get like a D rank in Ancient Beckoning and you just leave it alone, then over time you have missed out on so many Mastery Stones, right? But if you just get an S rank on Ancient Beckoning, you'll continuously get those Mastery Stones without even having to do anything, and that's sort of like what's happening here. Yeah, and I think that kind of sums up the Kingdom of Aurora and Covenant. So I'm just gonna go into this map event real quick. Maybe I can show you guys just how strong Thor can be, because Thor is really, like, these Covenants are actually really, really strong. The amount of damage they do is pretty nuts. Okay, well, these units are terrible. I don't know why they placed these units. These are like not units I even have raised. Okay. Hopefully I can charge up Thor enough here. Okay, so I can summon Thor now. Okay. So, you know, you can summon Thor within, I believe it was, I forgot how many blocks it was. Like, I think it was within 3 blocks of an ally. So you can see, like, right next to Bolzol, there's up to, I can summon him right here. Because that's 3 blocks away from Bolzol. I was just going to summon him right here. So when he first gets summoned, drops down, does some AoE damage. And he's just really strong. So, you know, he has 1 AoE and 1... Okay, this is the AoE, and this is a single... And this right here is a single target. So let me just show you guys just how strong single target is. It's pretty nuts. Alright. Yeah, it's really, really strong. It's like, it's kind of crazy. And of course, as I've mentioned in the past, you can use these guys in just about every PvE mode there is. You can even use them in co-op. You can use them in joint battle. You can use them in a lot of the Secret Realm events. You can't use them in PvP, but the stat boosts that they give do apply in PvP. And as far as how to change them, you know, like, I forgot to show you guys just now, but so you can see at the preparation screen right here is that I can go like this, and yeah, here I can choose which Covenant I want to use. So, you know, and I believe, oh, right, a button right here will show me what kind of boosts I have. So, yeah, it's kind of like a, you know, it's almost like, you know, like monster raising in a lot of our other RPGs, combined with a bit of like license board from Final Fantasy 12 or something. So yeah, I think that's really all there is to say. So if you guys still have any questions about it, you know, be sure to ask me below, and you know, I'll try to answer them. But I think this should be more than enough for you guys to know what's going on. Okay, that's all I got left to say. As always, thank you all for watching. Good luck on your polls, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time.